And then the tools we're using for throwing today are the wood trim tool, the wooden rib. You're gonna want your needle tool, and obviously your cutting string. So what you wanna try to do is throw that down pretty hard right in the middle. Okay, and then I like to do some dry centering first. You know, really make sure it's stuck on there. The more center your clay is before you get water on there, just the easier it's gonna be. And then make sure it's stuck down there. Really stick the edge down. Okay? So now we're gonna get it going. Decent speed. You don't need it going really fast. I like to take my foot off the pedal because then I feel more stable when both my feet are off the pedal. Some water on there, and then you want to sit so if you can, your hips are kind of at wheel height here, and you kind of lock your arms in. Okay? And then you want to kind of lean into the clay. A lot of times I'll kind of lock one elbow and kind of squeeze with the other hand. Okay? We're going to bring it up into this cone. We're doing this so that we can really center the clay to its core. I think I talked about that last time a bit. Okay, make sure you get all the way down to the wheel head here too. Okay, start way down at the bottom, lean into it, kind of squeeze it, lock your elbow. Okay, come up. So now I'm centering it more down into like the core of the clay. Does that make sense?
If you squeeze too hard, you're gonna take it right off. I'm sure you all know that if you've got a wheel arm or you screw the arm on it.
Yeah.
You have to treat it like a baby bird.
So now I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna use this part of my palms here. Back down. You can kind of lock your elbows into your legs again. Lean. You can just kind of lean your body into it. Use some body weight. Lock that elbow all the way back down. Okay?
So you're basically back to what you started.
Yeah, but now it's on center.
Okay. On the wheel.
Yeah, when I started, it wasn't that on center.
Okay.
You know, you might have to do that a few times.
Yeah.
I think for demo's sake right now, once is good enough. I like to try to keep my wheel head pretty clean too. With the groggier clay, if your wheel head's really dirty, you might sand your hands a bit.
You will.
Yeah. So now I got this kind of mound here. Pretty on center, not perfect, but that's okay. Because you really want the hole you make in the middle to be perfectly on center. You know, the outside can be a little off, as long as this is on the inside is nice and on center. So I'm gonna take my left hand, make an L, make a little brace, rest that on top, and then that acts as a brace for my right hand. I like to use my middle finger. Some people use 2 fingers. Come in with your thumb if you want, but I like the finger. And you kind of open it up like a volcano crater. So I'm not gonna try to go right down the middle right away. I'm gonna open it up, and as I go down, I can kind of feel it sucking my finger down in there like a whirlpool. Kind of let it suck your finger down in there. That way you know you're right on center too, when it sucks your
So
finger.
at that point, when you first started, if you weren't on center,
Yeah.
you know you're not.
Yeah. So when you think you've gone down far enough, make your finger nice and stiff and just open it up. Okay, and again for like mugs, I open up to about $1/4 silver dollar size for like a mug. Okay, if I want to throw a nice tall vase, I'm not going to want to open it too much. You know, the more I open it, the shorter I can make it. Okay, for a bowl, I'd open it pretty wide and then throw the lip. You know, for a plate, I would open it all the way up to the end of the bat here and then throw the lip on the plate. But we're going to be working on cylinders, mugs and cups. So now I'm kind of compacting that bottom.
You're just kind of using your fingers.
Yeah, I'm just compacting the bottom. Just here for right now. So a good thing to do when you're learning to throw is kind of measure your bottom so you can start to get an idea of how much clay you have down there. So you can poke your needle tool down, slide your finger down until it's clay, pull it out. Okay, I got a bit over 1/2 inch. That's quite a bit of clay. I don't really need that much, so I'm going to go down a little bit more.
Can't really touch a mask with clay fingers, can you?
Not really. I'm breathing out of my mouth. Let's measure that again.
I was thinking about your video. Oh, he can't.
Okay, still about 1/2 inch. You know, and we can trim it. Remember, we can trim. I'll trim it next class for you when we flip it upside down and trim the foot. Okay, so now I've got that opened up about 3 inches across there. I got the bottom nice and compacted and smooth. Okay, now I'm ready to start pulling. Okay, you don't want your wheel going real fast when you actually start making your pulls. Okay? So to make a pull, you're gonna make that dent on the outside, push that dent into your inside hand and just lift it. Try to lift it straight up. Let the clay kind of slide out through your fingers. Okay? And I like to keep the top compacted. I just kind of squeeze lightly and then push with my finger. Okay, not only does that keep your top nice and flat, if you have a massive clay up here at the top of your cylinder, it actually make your cylinder more stable as you throw it. Okay, because you got that ring of clay at the top. And then you can use that little ring of clay to throw a little lip or whatever you want to do with it. Okay, so when I can touch my hands together, it's easier for me to pull because I know that they're perpendicular on either side of the clay. It's very important that your hands are perpendicular on either side. If they're off in any way, your pot's just gonna start doing this. So when you can touch your hands together, I call it the claw. I make the claw. Now that I can't do that, it's a little trickier because I'm free floating now. I like to also throw with a sponge in my outside hand because it gives me a little more surface area to work with. Okay, let's make another pull. Make that dent, push that dent into my inside hand. Lift that straight up. Whoops. So you can see that was a little more goofy. That's okay. Let's see where we're at. 9.5 inches. I'm gonna collar that in a little bit. Okay, that would also make it taller, collaring it. So collaring, you wanna try to touch the clay around as many points on your hand as possible. Okay, and just come straight up, hook your finger over the top. So that was at about 9.5. Now that I've collared it, I'm at 10.5 now that I've collared. Okay, when you start getting really tall with it, you might want to stand up. You know, it's really throwing cylinders. That's just great practice, is throwing cylinders. Okay? And then the wood rib tool is really great. You know, if you want to kind of smooth it out a bit. You can kind of see where my finger is there on the inside. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whoops. I was making like utensil holders for a while, and I was just making nice kind of straight cylinders and then doing some design work on the outside, carving it, and little sgraffito, stuff like that. Okay. So I'm flaring out a little. You know, if I don't want that, I can always...
But you're purposely leaving a large bottom down there attached to the wheel.
Yeah, well, we can trim this later on down here.
But for now, is there a purpose why? Is it like give it better grip or something?
No, not really. I mean, you don't want to make it too thin down here at the bottom because that would definitely weaken your cylinder as you throw it. Okay, and then again, if your top's really wobbly, you know, I have a bunch of clay up here still that I can throw, you know, into a lip if I want. You know, there's lots of cool tricks you can do with lips. If it's really wobbly, grab your needle tool, we can trim the top off. Instead of coming right in, like right away, I'm gonna come in like it was playing a record, like a record needle. When it touches my finger, I can lift up, okay, and trimmed off that, you know, say you had a lip you didn't like or it was wobbly, okay? You can see how much thinner it was now too, compared to how thick that was. Okay, and then another thing I'll do is I'll trim a bit of clay off the outside before I cut it off so I don't have this big flared out piece. Yeah, so here you go. Take your wood trim tool. Just kind of run it down the side. Just take all that excess clay off. I didn't need any of that on there. And all this clay will get recycled, we'll reuse it. Okay, that comes off. Whoops, I kind of went a little deep. Now, if I was throwing like a really long neck vase or something that I didn't want to have to flip upside down and trim, I could do all the trimming on the exterior now while it's on the wheel. You know, I could measure the bottom to make sure I only had about 1/4 inch, and I could do all the trimming with this wood trim tool while it's on the wheel. And then I don't have to trim it later on. A lot of those like sculptural mugs I make, I'll do a bit of the trimming just like right when they're on the wheel. And then maybe just hand carve the foot. Saves me a little bit of time. I like them when they come in a bit at the bottom. And one of the last things I'll do is put a little shadow line underneath there with the tip of this. Kind of go under there and just kind of gouge out the bottom. And that gives me that little shadow line under there, which gives your pot a little bit of lift off of the surface of the table. See that little shadow line I have? Okay, and again, like I'm gonna save this to trim, so I'm gonna show you guys how to trim. There's quite a bit of clay on the bottom. We can trim it next class. And never leave water down in the bottom of your piece. Okay, that will cause your bottom to weaken and crack probably. So always get the water out. And if you're gonna color this in and make a vase, like make sure you get in there and get that water out first before you start coloring it in. Okay, and then last but not least, you gotta make sure you cut it off. Okay, so when you cut your pots off the wheel, wrap the cutting string up a little bit like dental floss and push down as you come through. Okay, if you're on the wheel, you can spin it a little bit and push down and then just pull towards yourself. Okay? If you don't push down and you just pull the cutting string under, it has a tendency to want to ride up and it could cut the bottom of your pot up. Okay? So since I'm on a bat now, I can either just pull this thing off, put another bat on. Usually what I like to do, and I talked about this last time, is I slide the work off, onto another bat, because then I can fit 2 or 3 pots on one bat and I'm not using up all my bats. So you get a lot of water on there, push down on your cutting string and drag the water underneath. Okay, and it's gonna wanna slide for you. Eventually it's gonna, come on.
I've never been very good at that.
And then you can slide it. I can take the splash pan off and slide it onto another bat, or if you don't really care, this has such a thick bottom on it, I can slide it, onto my hand. And now I can put this on my other bat. And there's quite a bit of clay down here that I'm gonna trim off for you guys on the next class.
Cool.